Hey everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome to this review of Onye Egwu. Onye Egwu is a comedy drama currently streaming on Prime. It's written by Victor Alabi, Stephen Oluboyo, and Kenneth Opukeme. It's produced and directed by Uche Jumbo. Its synopsis on Prime Video. Onye Egwu follows Nedu on his quest to become a professional footballer. Fortunately, he's requested by a famous player but has to choose between his dream and his education. First of all, Onye Egwu with two E's, two words, and Onye Egwu, one word. I don't know if they couldn't decide what the title of this movie was. And then also, as far as this synopsis, that did not happen. That's not the story. The person who wrote this synopsis did not watch this movie. Guys, please do me a favor. If you're not subscribed to this channel, can I please ask you to subscribe? Please consider subscribing. It really helps me out. It helps the channel out. And if you've not liked this video, please like that button as you continue watching. Thank you. Now, what are my first thoughts just hearing about this movie and coming into this movie? I like the premise of this movie. Is exciting. A movie about football. I could be wrong, but I don't know of any other Nollywood movie that has football as its central theme or centerpiece. The producer and director of this movie, Uche Jumbo, she's quoted as saying that she made this movie sort of an homage to her love for the sports. So I guess we'll see. Okay, the summary of plot. This movie, Onye Egwu, has two main plots that intersect. Nedu is a fast-rising football player, already popular in his local community, with aspirations to play professionally. He's nicknamed Onye Egwu. Alex, who is the real Onye Egwu, is a 29 football age international football star whose career has come to an abrupt end following a football injury. The plot unfolds very slowly, with Nedu nursing his ambition, which he tries to balance with his education against the backdrop of his family's financial struggles, and Alex going through the stages of grief regarding the loss of his career and finally coming to terms and acceptance of the situation. When it comes to a point where it's like both men are on the crucible of their careers, Nedu's, which hasn't taken off yet, and Alex's, which has just abruptly ended, a ray of light shines through, which produces an opportunity that feels like serendipity for the two lives to collide in a way that brings new meaning to their individual existences. Let's get straight to cast and performances. This is a star-studded cast. I don't think I've ever seen as many Nollywood actors and stars congregated in one movie. Like, this movie is practically bursting at the seams. You could call this Uche Jumbo and friends. Like, literally, as I was watching, that was all I could think. Like, look, all of her friends are here. Hey, that's another one about to pop up. Even when they just have like one scene, it's very fascinating. I will, however, limit this section to just the key performances. So let's start with the main character, who's Kayode Ojuolape, playing the character, or the main actor playing the character of Nedu. He gives a creditable enough performance, but I'm not rushing off to nominate him for awards or anything. However, I'm also not going to speak down on his performance. I'm just going to say that he did as much as the story gives him to do and the movie requires of him. That's not very much to say for one of the main protagonists, but that's what happens. It is what it is. Zubby Michael plays Alex. His performance is creditable enough, but again, not particularly noteworthy. In fact, if anything, I find his acting to be a bit one note, whether he's angry, excited, upset, happy, curious, whatever, he's just kind of unanimated. The writing of the character itself is problematic enough, and then the actor himself does it no real favors. So Uche Jumbo, I like her performance. I like the energy of her performance. First of all, let me just say that she's probably one of the best written characters in this movie, which is very ironic and not great. She gives a really good performance. She has very many strong moments in this movie. I enjoy her performance very much, and I still think she really puts forth a great depiction of like a very typical Nigerian mother. There are so many great instances of her really just playing very believably a typical Nigerian mother. And I also really enjoy her dialogue delivery. The rest of the performances are a mixed bag. Even the ones that are good, they have such a small footprint that I wouldn't even bother. Like Choma Apota. She's barely there, even if you know she's there. She has one good scene, one good moment. And then there are many of them that I've seen in the same role 100 times before. But Shaggy, not his typecast and unfunny. William Suchemba is William Suchemba of Merry Men 3 and of Instagram. Iniedo, I would have rated her performance highly if not for that Ibibio accent. I enjoy her performance here. The writing for her performance here is really good, and her actual performance is really good. The physicality of it as well, and the humor that feels like it comes from her, not from the script. But there's this thing that she and Kate Henshaw do with the accent. Anytime that they are cast in a character that is either Efik or a Bibio, they put on this exaggerated accent, and I don't like it. But that aside, she's one of the better written characters in this movie, and her performance is also really strong. Sunny Danja, who plays Coach Kazim, I give him a very high score here. He's actually one of the most immersed actors in this movie, in my opinion. And I also enjoy Emeka Nwagbarocha as Ahana. I actually wish that he had more to do in this story. He gave me more than both leads as well, which again is a shame. That's as much as I have to say about the cast and performances. So we are going to go straight to, guys, what works. But before we get into that, quick reminder to please like this video if you haven't, and then also to subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Now I'm going to quickly breeze through the technical aspects of this movie. So most of it is fine, nothing is particularly offensive, and a lot of it is actually really good. A lot of the cinematography is very decent. There are also some really good shots in the movie, and apart from the sound, which bothered me more than any other aspect, I think the score works for the most part, mostly because it's unobtrusive. It's in the background, except for that funny heartbeat doom, 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 during that scouting football match. It's like it's the field itself that is breathing. There's a decent amount of diegetic sound in this movie, especially off-screen dialogue. I quite like it, but in some instances it becomes a bit too overt and distracting, but for the most part I do enjoy that. Production design is quite okay, particularly the sets and the locations. They're fine. The community is shot quite believably. I like especially that sandy football pitch, costume, makeup, all of that. They're just what they need to be. Nothing too exciting, but also nothing bad. All in all, the technical aspects don't bother me that much because the movie has all the problems that it needs in the story. There are many aspects of this movie that are so authentically Nigerian, from the aesthetic to the humor, even those tweets that read like a real Nigerian Twitter timeline minus the insults. So all of those are really enjoyable, and so yeah, the aesthetics just feel really authentically Nigerian. So let's get to the story, and let's start with the good parts of the story, because where are we? In the what works section. The premise / concept is a bold attempt. I really like this concept, or the idea of the circle of life, the idea of a death giving a way for a birth. In this movie, the death of one person's career creates the space or opportunity for the birth of a new one. There's a lot of lightheartedness that makes this a feel-good family story. I like the infusion of betting in this story because betting and sports go hand in hand. In any sports world, betting is a staple. While in general I don't enjoy a lot of the comedy, especially Brother Shaggy, I don't find him funny, but a lot of it works. There are few themes and subject matters that come up: financial difficulties as a result of widowhood, nurturing of ambition juxtaposed with the loss of hope, IPV, that's intimate partner violence. You know what? I'm trying to list the themes that this movie tackles, but the problem I'm having right now is that this is supposed to be the what works section, meaning the positives, but I'm struggling because the socially relevant topics that show up, they're barely engaged with, or they're just mishandled to where a coherent statement cannot really be made that translates into like a value statement. And so just permit me to abandon that. I'm not going to talk about the themes. Another thing that this movie does as far as the story is how well it aligns the main plots, the way that Nedu and Alex's stories intersect, even if it happens really late in the movie, but at least it happens. There are a number of subplots that are unresolved, but at least the main plots do get resolved. I also like the mix of languages. We have Pidgin, English, Igbo, a sprinkle of Igbo and Yoruba. And then finally, I appreciate the ambition and intention of this film. And so I guess you could say in general that this is a decently made film. That said, is this a well-told story? And that question ushers us into what does not work. There's so many issues with the plot, guys, the structure and the substance. If I try to go bit by bit, scene by scene, we will be here forever. So I'm just going to summarize this to say that there are too many plot inconsistencies and contrivances, and I'm going to focus on the very relevant ones. One, Nedu's ambition. Now, the movie tells us that Nedu wants to be a professional footballer, but we never see him actually actively pursue this dream. We never see him do anything to raise the money. We never see him like sacrifice, put himself on the line, take risks. There's no I don't really see this ambition. We're being told but not shown, except that like most boys, he picks up his boots and goes to play football in the evening. But guess what? I play football as well. I played football so much that eventually the only way my dad could stop me was that he told me that I was going to get injured. I would get my leg broken. He would not take me to the hospital. He would let me be in the house. The injury would fester, and then they would have to amputate my leg. Literally, my dad told me that, and I was a child enough to believe him. I mean, who knows, right? You never know with parents, but that was how I stopped playing football. I was really passionate about football, but that did not mean that I nursed any hopes for professional football. So I'm not going to assume that his love for football translates to an actual big ambition. It feels to me like I see the ambition more from the coach than I actually see it with Nedu himself. The movie also is written like it has foresight that there's going to be a Deus Ex Machina in the form of Alex showing up, and this character is so laid back. It's like he already knows that something miraculous is going to happen to rescue this ambition for him or sort things out on his behalf. And by the way, Ahana's gambling story could have been tied to the main plot by making it such that his gambling was about contributing to his brother's football dream, and that's one way that at least that subplot could have tied to the main plot. Number two, the death of Alexis' career. The way that news is announced, first of all, to him, it's incredulous. A random doctor for an international soccer player of his stature stopped playing. And then it doesn't help, the character is immediately unlikable because, first of all, he's sexist in that scene where he's like, I want a male doctor, give me a male doctor. And the story never actually addresses that. So he's really unpleasant basically throughout this movie. Also, he never feels like a real person, and then he feels even less like a person when they put Williams Muchemba's character in front of him. He then disappears behind that character, so that even eventually when his life is to take a new direction, it comes in the form of advice from somebody else. It doesn't originate from him, so it's almost like he's following along with somebody else's dream for him in his story. His career ending so abruptly is a terrible pain, but other than the cheap comedy of the spiritual circuit, we don't actually see him grieve this. This is a big deal. This is what makes stories like this take. And then number three, the scouting match. Just that whole third act, everything about that, it just really frustrated me. So let's break it down. First of all, stating that they're coming to scout Nedu specifically, I don't know why they would do that. You know, it takes away any dramatic tension. They're coming for him. So there's not even any real need, if you think about it, for the rest of that football competition, whatever. They're coming for Nedu. They might as well have just come to see him and not have to set up a whole scouting exercise. And then the next thing, Nedu taking that spiked drink from his teammate. I mean, the last time we saw them together, they have a big argument. Then the next thing, he passes you a drink out of nowhere and you just take it and gulp it. For what? So that just reads like plot convenience. And then the Coach Kazim, he loses his star player, right? But then never once do we see him exhibit any concern about this. That is so confusing. I'm curious, you've been talking about how big a deal this is for the team. You have this guy coming, and then this is literally the star of your team, and then this big opportunity is coming. He falls sick, and you're not doing everything that you can, taking him to the doctors, doing everything that you can to make sure that he's on his feet on that day. I needed to see moves around this illness, but the way it's handled is just such a curious state of affairs. Also, that whole contrived drama around Nedu leaving the house, that just pissed me off. If Nedu is sick, let him be legitimately sick and then he has to struggle to go and play this match and we know he's ill. Or if he's well, let him be well and go and play the match. There was really no reason for all that cloak and dagger and subterfuge of him pretending to not want to eat and then having the energy to jump out through the window after literally he was sick 5 seconds ago. What was all that about? And then he has to run. He's suddenly well. So that whole drama was just contrived. I don't know if that was supposed to be suspense. I didn't have any suspense around it because it wasn't well executed. What I also expected to be his main challenge as a result of this whole poisoning, that whole poison subplot, it wasn't utilized. Remember when he's drinking that drink, Coach Kazim is announcing that if you miss practice, if you're late, if you do this, if you do that, you're not going to be allowed to play on that day. And so when we see Nedu, obviously we're thinking, oh my God, he's not going to be able to come to practice and he's not going to be allowed to play on that day. So imagine my surprise when he does all the things that Coach Kazim says not to do. He definitely does not make any of the practice sessions. He's allowed to play and I'm like, what is this? I really expected a moment of tension where he would have to actually fight to be allowed to play. When Coach Kazim says absolutely not, he has to eventually do something audacious or daring to get onto that field. He should have had to fight his way. This protagonist is such a passive protagonist. He doesn't really do anything. He doesn't have to fight for anything. He's just allowed to get on there and play. And I think that one way that also the whole poisoning thing could have resolved to where he gets to play was if they had then merged that whole drama that was being created by Iniedo's character. What if in all the confusion she was creating on the field, she had gotten 1 or 2 of the players injured? Now they are short and then he has no choice but to let him on. So I would have liked to see a situation where he makes it onto that field just by the skin of his teeth. Or maybe even what's his name that came to scout him intervenes, because don't forget they came here for this boy and then they don't see him on the field. There are so many other ways that this could have happened. This character really does not have any obstacles in his way and I don't know how that is your protagonist. The filming of the match itself, first of all, we just have this silent, almost like mannequin crowds that don't react to whatever is happening around them. That whole nonsense with Brother Shaggy coming and arguing a woman, who by the way is the head of the planning committee of that entire event, to stand up. He causes a lot of ruckus around there, right? And everyone is just sitting there like mannequins, including, by the way, Buchi, who is sitting there. Don't forget, they made a big deal about this event being filmed, right? And you can imagine that they probably intend to use it for a lot of social media campaign around this event because this is a big deal to them. And then this clown is creating this drama right there beside them and nobody says anything. Not even, hey, you're ruining our footage or dragging down the dignitas of this event. No, everybody just sits down there and allows him harass this woman for 1 minute straight. And then also when Iniedo's character gets up and goes and is arguing with the coach, first of all, for a match of this importance, there's no way that this coach is taking his eyes off that field. In fact, I think that argument happened when the other team scored. Are you kidding me? First blood on this critical match and the coach is having an argument with a rando. The structure of the plot of this movie in general, but also the structuring of events within scenes, and especially in this big sequence that's supposed to be the high point of this movie, was just so unrealistic. And so all of that stuff is just filmed really poorly. I'm sorry. All of the above culminates in the main problem of this movie, which is the complete lack of emotional impact. Let me throw a few titles at you. Rudy, Who's Years, The Champ, Hardball, Cinderella Man, Prefontaine, Are We Getting Warm, Miracle, Warrior, Friday Night Lights, Brian's Song, Remember the Titans, $1 Million Arm, Southpaw, and more recently, The Iron Claw and The Boys on the Boat. Guys, biopic, fiction, film series, what do all of these have in common? Sports and huge, massive, emotional tearjerkers. And you know what Onye Egwu has in common with these movies? Sports. What we see of it. This movie is not lit, it's not shot, it's not color graded, it's not scored, it's not paced, it's not structured or narrativized for emotional impact. There's no nostalgia, there's no evocation of emotion, just things happening on screen. I didn't feel anything, and there's so many critical moments that are missed. Let me give you a few instances. The moment when Alex discovers his injury, it's just not impactful, and that's such a huge moment, right? There's no specific moment when, after he's gone through the stages of grief, eventually he accepts his fate. And also, guys, I don't like that his idea to take on Nedu does not happen of his own volition. How do I even know that he wants that? I don't know that Nedu, first of all, is even crazy about football as the movie insists, and also I don't know that Alex is crazy about managing Nedu after the end of his own career, because none of these things actually seem to be really shown or originate from these people. It looked to me like Coach Kazim actually fought harder for Nedu's football professional career than he himself. So I don't even know that he wants that badly for himself, as well as I don't know that this means something profound for Alex. Nedu, there's no tangible moment when we see his loss of hope in his ambitions and just the death of that dream that he'll ever get to play soccer professionally. And so we're not able to feel euphoric when he does get scouted. I couldn't even decide if this movie is more about his personal ambition or the team's ambition. And by the way, I don't even see the correlation, because I don't really see how him getting scouted actually has an impact, a real impact on the team, the way Coach Kazim seems to imply. To be honest with you, I felt Inedo's ambition for her son than I felt anything about Nedu's ambition, because at least her ambition for her son is very clear, right? Another critical moment that is missed, and I really wanted to see that, is the moment when these two men meet, Alex and Nedu. I don't think it's hard to imagine how important that meeting would have been, as Nedu meets the person that he's, again, idolized, his whole life, and then the complexity of emotions that Alex would be feeling in that moment as he grapples with the fact that this is possibly his replacement, but also the key to his continued relevance. And so it would be a very emotionally complicated moment for him, I can imagine, but we don't see that at all. And then finally, I really do not like the closing image of this movie. That press conference could have been powerful for both men. Alex expressing his grief, getting that out of the way, and then ending with strength and conviction on his new direction, so that when then he introduces Nedu, it's powerful for both men. As it's done here, Alex is a blubbering mess, and because of that, what should be Nedu's moment is basically eclipsed. He's made so insignificant and small in that scene what should have been the triumphant start to his football career. And so I just did not like that at all. There's a love story that is teased, but it never manifests. And the love story that they then tried to force down our throats just did not work at all. Some of the dialogue is completely inconsistent. For instance, early on in the movie, there's a line by Ufoma McDermott's character, the school teacher. Apropos of nothing, literally, she says something like, in order to win, you have to take a shot. I'm like, that makes no sense in the context of this scene. Then later down the line, when Inedo is talking to her son, describing about meeting her husband, she's describing it as though it's a positively correlated analogy. I think something like, I was supposed to go somewhere with my friend, and thank God I didn't go, because if I had gone, I wouldn't have met your father. But I'm sorry, throughout this movie, she's abusing this man. And by the way, all that stuff that was going on with her and Adedimeji Lateef's character, I hope we recognize it as intimate partner violence. That's abuse. If we had swapped that and it was a man who was consistently talking to his wife in that way, we would have recognized it immediately for what it was, as incredibly abusive. It's not funny. Nothing about that was funny, and yet it was played for laughs. And so she spends the entire movie basically insulting that man. But then, like I was saying, in that scene now, it's almost like, I'm so glad I didn't go off with my friend, or I wouldn't have met your father. Like, it makes no sense. You hate this man. And so, guys, in conclusion, I'm just just going to say that this movie could have been so much better with a better, tighter script. The sound did it no favors, and in a movie like this, the score is everything. This movie failed to elicit any emotions in me, and especially for a movie like this that has the raw material for emotional impact right at its fingertips. It's worth the watch. It was fun. I'm not going to say it's not a good watch, but then I'm not also going to like give a high praise. However, don't take my word for it, because I saw someone on Twitter say that this is the best movie, Nollywood movie they've seen this year. You could enjoy this movie. I did some parts. I mean, like I said, there were some chuckles here and there. Some parts were funny, and also, you know, if you're enamored of any of these actors, you might enjoy it for them. And also, the story is not completely terrible. There are different story threads that work as independent stories, you know, but together, I wish they had managed to marry all those plots together and make it work. But really, most importantly, I wish that they had trimmed a lot of the fat. There's so much that was just not necessary, and because they packed it with so much fluff, it didn't give room to actually go into developing the characters, developing the plot, and just really going. I don't know these characters. They are also one-dimensional. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this review of Onye Egwu. Please don't leave without leaving a like and also a comment. Can I ask again, if you're not subscribed? I hope I've been able to convince you to subscribe to this channel. I have a lot of videos, so please check out my other videos. There's going to be the short version of this review linked below, so please check that out as well. And what do I tell you guys? You have the right to an incredible viewing experience, so never settle. Thank you.